Hello everyone, it's me, Anthony. Okay, so to start off this thing, I was going to record a bunch of clips, but it became way too much of a hassle trying to get everything with this computer I was trying to use. So, not going to be any clips. Prepare for some random uncomfortable jokes. Okay, I did not want this. I did not think this would happen. But we were watching the Lord of the Flies movie in class, so I might as well do my passion. Welcome to the review. Oh, and this is in the black and white version, the black and white era, so it's old. From the beginning, the movie shows the story rather than telling it, and I wanted to point that out because a lot of movies that are book adaptations have that issue. They tell the story rather than showing it. So it had my hopes high for this. But I did encounter another issue at the beginning, which was bland acting. I know they're kid actors, but since this entire movie's cast is kids, they could do a little better. Right, for the first uncomfortable joke, I'm uncomfortable with how long it shows them undressing. Moving on, I want to talk about the character's look. I'm impressed with the twins' look, but the others, I didn't imagine the characters to look like that at all. Which I can't really blame them for, since when reading books, everyone has a different perspective and vision of what they see the characters as. Even though I don't think anyone imagined for the choir to look like a bunch of cultists. Talking about the choir, they're not intimidating at all. And even with their introduction, it's very strange because it seems like they don't even remember their names. There's like a pause in between each one. Different lengths, and it's just gets on my nerves. The next scene to talk about is the piggy scene. And that did not hit as hard in the movie as in the book, because everyone and everything just seems so bland. This was Piggy's emotional moment, but the voice and the expressions of the actor ruined it for me. And it's even worse, because even though most of the kids' voices are bland through the movie, the expressions aren't, so that just makes it even sadder to me. But something I noticed from watching the movie after I read the book is that a lot of scenes don't hit as hard in the movie, because in the book, everything seems much more important. But that's not saying the movie does bad, because a lot of scenes still hit pretty well, and there's a few in particular I will talk about in more detail later. Another change I want to talk about is Ralph, and he seems a lot nicer in the movie early on, even though it wasn't like that in the book. Or at least it doesn't feel like it in the book. Even though the movie was an exact recreation of the book. But I enjoyed this change because it makes Ralph a sympathetic character early on. And in the book, it took me a while to really root for him. So the characters got to explore the island, and we get a good feel for it, but it's not as mysterious, because in the book there's a huge mystery surrounding this island, but the movie doesn't really have that. They just got rid of it. Okay, so after they explore the island, they have a meeting, and the shot is just so boring. It's shot on the group of kids rather than Jack speaking, which lessens a lot of the emotional impact. Ha! I see the irony because I read the book. Jack saying we're not savage only to be the first savage. That's amazing. Foreshadowing stuff. Aha! 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 Okay, so another one of my problems is everything is established way too early on, which hurts the pacing. And I know this is a movie, not a book, so they have less amount of time, but still, they could have just made the movie longer if needed. It's an hour and a half. They could have just added an extra of a half hour for some of the scenes. I said that wrong. Okay. So I've gotten used to the acting by this point, so at least you can get used to it, and it isn't really unbearable the whole time. And we see the issue with the fire scene, and how it makes everyone riled up and unreasonable, which we know will create an issue in the future. Okay, so Piggy's boring talk that isn't interesting at all. You get the plane scene, which isn't as intense as in the book, which is a huge issue, because in the book, it's the beginning of the divide between Jack and Ralph. So they need the plane to show why it's an issue. But the beginning of the divide is still uncomfortable after the plane issue, which is good. Okay. The uncomfortable jolt time. Slap looks too fake, even for the time. Piggy slap. I like the relationship between Piggy and Ralph way more in this movie because it feels a lot more genuine and closer. It honestly just makes me happier seeing that relationship play out on screen than it did reading it in the book. Alright, so admittedly a lot of things look too fake, but it definitely is just a product of the time. Okay, another uncomfortable jolt. There is a scene where the kids are chanting, and I love the detail of them being uncoordinated because it shows how young they really are. Alright. They got rid of the kid with the mark, making even less sense why everyone turned on each other, because then there's no reason as to why. The kid in the mark was the first thing that made everyone realize, oh god, this is serious. We're stuck on an island. But since they don't have that, it comes out of nowhere why everyone starts turning into savages. They made the decision about what the beast is early on as well, so they skip a huge section of the book, which was definitely a couple for time, but in the end it doesn't matter, because they could have just added the extra half hour and it would have been solved. We also see during the meeting Jack being more savage and mean when he first killed the pig because of the way he acts towards Piggy and the expression he has. Like I said, expressions in this movie really work well. We also see Ralph's hesitancy on being chief, which is great because in the book, I say that a lot, we don't feel as much, but seeing the way the characters act helps everything feel more justified. We know just enough about Simon to care if he lives or dies, but I don't feel like I would be devastated if I didn't read the book. That's another issue. Okay, so by this point is when I noticed that things are moving way too quickly, because Jack's regression into becoming a savage comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't feel right. And yet again, if they just extended the time of the movie, we could have seen that. The biggest thing holding this movie back is just the pacing. Okay, so the twins see the parachute of the corpse, but we don't know the Beast's corpse in the movie yet. And I like this because it puts us into the perspective of the kids on the island. But an issue with the Beast is that it just feels like a mystery and not a threat, so it's not as impactful. Luckily, they kept hunting the Beast as tense in the movie as in the book, so I guess it balances out in a sense. So they go to where the Beast lives, and we see Jack with some humanity when he goes to help Ralph hunt the Beast. Or he could just want the glory. That's probably it. And right in the middle, there's Piggy's story. They could have showed it while Piggy was talking, but instead it's just a still shot of Piggy talking. And even then, the scene isn't really important, so they could have just cut it out and made even more time for the movie. Oh, I enjoyed the first view of the Beast corpse. It looked really well done. It was probably my favorite effect in the movie. Second. Okay, so the divide between Jack and Ralph isn't as emotional as it could have been, which is an issue because it's supposed to be this massive divide. And we see later that is, but when it first happened, I barely cared at all. Oh, and there's an uncomfortable scene with Simon. Recommend to go to the top of the mountain where the beast lives, and it gives you time to think on it. It's a great, because it gives you breathing room. Oh god, I'm losing oxygen. Okay, so around this point, I noticed how much the sound effects helped the movie. And it knows when to be silent or have nature sound effects. But unfortunately, the music doesn't work well until the very end. We never see a gruesome death, even of a pig, which sucks because it lessens the impact, even though the sound does make up for it. Plus, I have to remember this was long ago, and they didn't have the effects to do that, so it still works really well. The Lord of the Flies scene in the movie is done really well, and we don't hear the pig speak, which is great, because once again, it puts you in the perspective of the character. Plus, it makes everything way more tense and uncomfortable than a talking pig head on a stick. Which, yeah, the Lord of the Flies is definitely my favorite effect in the movie. Okay, so we see the kids and their war paint, and yeah, they don't look savage yet, and Jack looks like a party clown. They don't intimidate me, they make me want to laugh at them. But while the look doesn't intimidate you, the actions do. Simon's death is done perfectly. It creeps me out the way the kids are shown, the sound that is made, and it just creates a beautiful and almost scary scene. And the aftermath makes me less bitter and more sad about Simon's death, which honestly I didn't expect because of the way they treated Simon throughout the movie. I didn't really have a huge attachment, but the way they showed everything made me care. But I am still bitter, just sad too. And after we see Simon's corpse, the silence of everything is haunting. Yeah, the movie from here gets really good, and it's almost like art, but it doesn't excuse all the flaws at the beginning. So, another great scene is Piggy justifying everything. And it shows Piggy's flaw way better in the movie than the book, because he is acting perfectly calm, which makes it sink in how much Piggy is justifying himself what he did. It's honestly just an amazing scene. It's an amazing section of the movie. I love it so much. I feel uncomfortable every time we see the hunters from this point forward, which is great. Except the spanking scene, it just makes me uncomfortable in the not good way. That one really got. So the hunters steal the fire, but stealing the fire doesn't feel like it's a big deal in the movie, as it is in the book, because it's mostly focused on stealing the glasses, and it feels less impactful as a result. So they get to talk with Jack, and the pressure starts rising during the monologue as we see the boulders start to get pried, making us even more tense. But this still isn't as tense in the movie than in the book, yet again, even though it's one of the most important. Okay, this is gonna sound really messed up, but honestly, Piggy's death in the movie was way more funny than it should have been. It just made me so close to laughing. But the aftermath had that tense, sad feeling when a character death happens, so it's saved. But another bad thing is that we don't see Jack's savagery afterwards of him not caring. Because he does have remorse in his expression, which is bad, because by this point, Jack is supposed to be too far gone. So everything is a bit tense, though the hunt of Ralph should have amplified that to an extreme, because our main character is about to die. But sadly, I don't feel like that while I'm watching it. Still has a good use of sound effects, though. As an example, as the hunters start getting closer to Ralph and the chanting gets louder, it affects you. You hear them coming closer and closer. And then there's a sudden silence. He looks up and he sees the officer. Which looked exactly how I imagined he looked, so I won. And from here, the rest of the movie is silent, other than sound effects and music, which I think is supposed to let you sink everything in. And after that, when you see Ralph cry, it just feels completely justified. So, overall, it wasn't a bad movie, and it was okay, but it's not good. Its age definitely affected a lot of the things it could have done, but sadly, it still didn't age well. And the pacing creates a huge problem, and overall, it's not a timeless movie. And that would have been the end of it, but we have an assignment of what the message of the Lord of the Flies is, and I mentioned in the book review that I believe it was a representation of the loss of innocence. So I'm going to take this opportunity and throw my explanation right here. Oh, and I have to do this outline here, so you're about to be very confused. Here, have a black screen. Hello everyone, I'm back. Finally wrote everything. So in this I'm going to be talking about the theme of The Lord of the Flies, a novel by William George, which I believe to be nature versus nurture. Whether or not kids are born innocent and are corrupted over time, or we were never innocent to begin with. I believe the author thinks kids, and all of us really, were never innocent, and we all just repress it. Here are 3 examples because school assignment. Example 1 has to do with the main character of the story, Ralph. Ralph believed in the beginning of the story that because his dad was in the Navy, they would be saved really quickly and weren't scared to be on the island. However, he soon learned how arrogant that was and how his dad wasn't coming to save him. His father was the one that told him they had every map ever, and that led to Ralph believing he would be fine. So, in an attempt to protect his son from a harsh reality, he ended up putting him in even more danger, because Ralph was taught to believe that he would always be safe. The next example is Roger. Roger was always a bully, and at the beginning of the book, he was throwing out rocks at some kid, but he was purposely missing the kid so he wouldn't hurt him. But later, he ended up crushing Piggy with a giant boulder. Now, everyone, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Well, I'll tell you. He was taught to never hurt anyone, but without adults around, he had the full capability of killing. Yeah, that's extreme, but you gotta make a good story. Final example is Jack and his feelings with hunting. At the beginning of the book, he was very hesitant to kill a pig, even though he showed he knew exactly how. Then he killed his first pig, and his next. Then the next. And then the next. And he killed a lot of pigs. But in the end, he created a manhunt with Ralph as his target. He was taught not to hunt, and that killing was bad, but very shortly after adults aren't around, he starts hunting and killing pigs, and eventually kills a person, and then starts to hunt for another person, letting his nature take over. So I think by now you see all the evidence pointing to the author believing that no one is truly innocent, you smart person, you. So I conclude that this was the author's view, and there is nothing you can do to prove otherwise. Except maybe the kids who are actually good, like Piggy and Simon, so yeah, okay, I'll do that. I already talked about Ralph and his dad, so next we're going to talk about Piggy. Piggy was always a good kid and responsible, shown by the fact that he knew what a conch was. Makes most of the decisions for Ralph, and he definitely didn't kill Simon. Or help. Except he did. So as life goes forward on the island, he grows more confident. This being because kids at his school bullied him about his asthma and weight. But without any boys around, he did grow more confident. And he even defended himself against Ralph. And he defended him against himself about watching Simon die, blaming the savages so he can have a clear conscience. The final character to talk about is Simon, the shy, quiet one from the island, who never really changes throughout the story, except he was always aware about the darkness of the island, shown by when he recommended the beast was inside all of us. Also, he was the only one to talk to the Lord of the Flies because of lack of water. Now that guy back there, yeah, I was gonna leave you to figure it out for yourself, but it looks nothing like I intended it to look. So, that's supposed to be the Lord of the Flies. So, what do I think the author's view is now? Well, it's a mixed bag. He definitely believes some people are initially born bad, though he knows some people are just very sheltered. You see, they were all sheltered in one way or another, but the difference is, the good characters aren't capable of killing or anything, but they're still capable of bad actions. So, I still believe the author thinks everyone is born with some evil in them. Except Simon. He really is just a victim. He did nothing wrong in the book, and we know nothing about how he was at the island, so he's clearly blameless. Anyway, I think the author was also trying to ask the question of whether or not we should shelter our kids. And I think he believes we should. At least until they're old enough to understand why these things are bad. Because after a while without the adults, all the kids became bad in some way. Except Simon, he's close to perfect. He's just really shy. Bye.